Planes, whether you're going on an amazing adventure with friends or visiting family members on the other side of the world, they are one of the most influential inventions of all time. The first time I was in a plane was when I was 11 months old. The first time I flew alone was in 2014 when I was 7 years old, from Vancouver to Zurich. Due to flying on more than 60 different flights, I have grown a massive fascination of aviation. This was one of the reasons I chose this as my film. Like many people, I've flown planes just to get from point A to point B, not fully appreciating what we've gone through to get to this era. Just a century ago, the fastest way to cross the Atlantic was by a steamboat, which took around 15 days. Compare that to today's 6 to 7 hour flight, it's completely amazing how far we've come. It all started with two people, Wilbur and Orville Wright. The two brothers were born in the United States. Wilbur on April 16, 1867, and Orville on August 19, 1871. They are most known for making the first powered, heavier-than-air aircraft called the Wright Flyer, which flew for around 12 seconds over a distance of 36 meters. This flight was made on December 17, 1903, in the state of North Carolina. In the year 1919, the first transatlantic flight was made by British aviators John Alcock and Arthur Brown in the Vickers Vimy, a modified World War I bomber from Clifton, Ireland to Newfoundland, Canada. In the 1920s and 30s, much progress was made in the aviation industry, introducing planes such as the famous Douglas DC-3, one of the first profitable passenger airliners. After World War II, many pilots, particularly in North America, left the Army, which resulted in there being a boom in aviation, both in general aviation and in civil aviation. Seeing the introduction of the de Havilland Comet, the world's first commercial jet airliner started to arise, one of the most successful being the Boeing 707, which had a capacity of 140 people, 4 times as many as the de Havilland Comet. In my quest to learn more about the history of aviation, I decided to interview my dad's friend, Raoul Geiger. He's an experienced paraglider pilot, with whom I went on a tandem flight a few years ago.
Ja, ich bin der Raoul Geiger, wohne hier in Riepenbrück. Das ist meine Flugschule hier. Ich habe eine Gleitschirmflugschule. Mein Großvater ist der Hermann Geiger. Er ist bekannt für die Gletscherfliegerei. Der Hermann hat angefangen, schon als Jugendlicher zu fliegen, mit einem Segelflugzeug, das er daheim gebaut hat, mit seinem Schwager zusammen. Und das haben sie im Stall von den Eltern gebaut. Im Stall, und als sie es fertig gebaut haben, kannst du es lösen. Und dann hast du gemerkt, dass das Flugzeug zu gross ist. Oder die Stalltiere zu klein. Und dann musst du den halben Stall demontieren, um das Flugzeug zum Stall zu holen. Nachher hat der Hermann in St. Gallen Polizeischule gemacht. Und dann haben sie in Sitten einen Flugplatzchef gesucht. Und der Hermann hat den Job bekommen. Er war ein fliegender Polizist und war von der Stadt Sitten angestellt.
Hermann Geiger flew the Piper J3 Cub, a small aircraft known for its amazing takeoff and landing performance.
Da hat er nachher einen Ski dran montieren. Das Flugzeug ist ja so breit, und da bist du drin so und hast keine Möglichkeiten. Und da ist der Verletzte nachher hinten drin geschoben und so irgendwie ins Tal gebrungen. Anschliessend hat er auch mit der Pilatus-Porter geflogen. Das war ein grösseres Flugzeug, grosse Spannweite, starker Motor. Und so hat er einfach mehr Material, schweres Material und mehr Leute befördern. Und dann hat er viel mit der Pilatus-Porter gemacht, auch mit Ski. Er war die Person, die die Flugrettung hat ins Leben gerufen hat. Das heisst, er hat Leute, die in Bergnotzung waren, sich verletzt haben und auf Hilfe sind angewiesen waren, hat er gerettet. Und dazu hat er eine spezielle Methode entwickelt. Und der Grossvater hat noch gesehen, ja, es hat nicht überall einen flachen Gletscher, oder? Ich muss auch im steilen Gelände landen. Und seine Technik war, dass er mit dem Flugzeug ist mit Geschwindigkeit angeflogen, das Flugzeug hat den Hang im Brief gezogen und er so gelandet ist, nachher das Flugzeug hat quer gestellt, dass nicht rückwärts abrutscht, oder? Und so hat er in steileren Gelände und näher diesen Leuten landen und die so retten. Was nachher war, er hat auch sehr viele Güter abgeworfen, das heisst, die Hüttenversorgung gemacht, mit Essen, Post, was auch immer, dramatisch abgeschnitten war, mal einen schweren Lawinenwinter. Und dann hat er auch eigentlich sicherstellen, dass man Post ein- und ausfliegen, dass man Material einfliegen kann, oder? Und er war eigentlich das einzige Verbindungsmittel zu dem abgeschnittenen Zermatt. Dann hat er aber auch das Wild versorgt, hat Wild, das im Winter, wenn es ja viel Schnee hat, kannst du nichts zu essen gehabt, hat er einfach uns Gutwill eigentlich einen Hellball abgeworfen, dass das Wild hat Futter gehabt. Und dann ist eben der Helikopter gekommen. Der erste Helikopter hat er von der Coop-Genossenschaft gesponsert bekommen. Also die haben den Aufruf gemacht, es ist Geld für den Raoul Geiger einen Helikopter. Und dann haben die in der kürzesten Zeit, glaube ich, 500.000 zusammen gehabt, für den Heli zu kaufen. Das war ein Bell 42, glaube ich. Er hat schlussendlich einen Haufen Leute das Leben gerettet, hat 𝗟𝗛𝗡𝗢𝗧𝗏 gerettet. Ja, er ist 1940 zu Weltkurs, 66 schon gestorben, also er ist 52 Jahre gekommen. In der Zeit hat er x-tausend Leute gerettet, 𝗟𝗛𝗡𝗢𝗏, hat über 20'000 Flugstunden gehabt in der kurzen Zeit. Das ist heute eigentlich gar nicht mehr möglich, dass du so viele Flugstunden machen kannst. Und hat einen Haufen Flugschilder ausgebildet. Das hat er, glaube ich, sehr gerne gemacht. Das ist vielleicht ein bisschen abseits von dem verrückten Teil, den er gemacht hat, oder wo er sehr gefordert war.
15 years later, the world of aviation would change once again with two major additions, those being the Boeing 747 and the Concorde. In the 60s, the Concorde was introduced, the first supersonic airliner. It was built in cooperation between England and France. This plane cut the 7-hour flight from London to New York down to just 2 hours and 15 minutes. Most airliners nowadays fly at 10,000 meters altitude. The Concorde needed to fly at 18,000 meters altitude, so as to achieve minimal drag. Though the plane only held around 120 passengers, it was believed that due to its fast speeds, it would make it worth it for airlines. It sounded like a perfect plane, but what went wrong? On the Concorde, a flight from New York to London costed around $12,000 in today's money. This was mostly due to the immense amount of fuel it would consume. The Concorde used around 25,000 liters of fuel per hour, compared to the Boeing 747, which used 14,000 liters per hour and could carry up to 5 times more passengers. The Concorde was able to fly at 2,400 kilometers per hour, flying at more than 2 times the speed of sound. This required the aircraft to break the sound barrier. Simplified, this means that the aircraft travels faster than the sound it's emitting. Because of this, it creates a very loud boom. This boom sound was very disturbing and could often break glass on small windows. On the 25th of July 2000, an Air France flight leaving Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris punctured a tire during takeoff, which led to the tragic crash, resulting in the death of 113 people. The Concorde was a revolutionary design for its time, but due to many factors in its way, it was eventually grounded on April 10th, 2003. Going back to the 60s, the Boeing 747's first flight was on February 9th, 1969, and it was probably one of the most influential planes of all time. With its max capacity of 524 passengers, the largest aircraft at the time, it was nothing like the world had ever seen. The plane continued to be used by airlines for more than 50 years. During the COVID-19 crisis, many 747s were retired, due to airlines preferring smaller, more efficient planes like the Airbus A350 and the Boeing 787. The final Boeing 747 delivery is scheduled for October of 2022, which will see the end of an era of aviation, and will make way for whatever is to come. In September of 2020, Airbus released 3 major aircraft concepts, all under the name Airbus Zero-E, meaning zero emissions. Scheduled to enter service by 2035, they will be powered by hydrogen, rather than kerosene or electric engines. But how would an engine running on hydrogen work? Simply put, liquid hydrogen is burned with oxygen in a gas turbine, which in turn creates an efficient propulsion system. The engine would emit H2O, which is harmless to the environment, and is currently the most viable way of powering future aircraft. Another huge upside is that hydrogen fuel would be able to be used in current aircraft in the market, with slight modifications to the engines being necessary. Airbus has come up with 3 genius concepts using this system of hydrogen engines. The first concept is a blended wing design. which is when the wing and the fuselage blend together with no visible divide between them. The design is much more efficient than a standard airliner due to it producing absolute maximum lift. It would also be able to fly long range with many passengers. Similar to the Canadian Bombardier Q400, the second design on the list is meant for regional flights. This aircraft would have 2 hydrogen turboprop engines with a range of around 1,800 kilometers, around the distance from Zurich to Portugal. This plane would be able to carry around 100 passengers. The last design is the one that I'm personally most excited about, because it is in my opinion the one that I'd be most likely to fly on. This aircraft looks similar to the Airbus A320 and would carry around 200 passengers to a range of 3,700 kilometers, the perfect range for most European airlines. Before I came to Switzerland, I used to live on Vancouver Island, in Canada. It's an island on the west coast, which also turns out to be 10,000 square kilometers smaller than Switzerland. Most commercial flights arrive at Vancouver International Airport, also known as YVR. There are multiple ways to travel to the island, either with a ferry that takes around 2 hours, a regional flight to Victoria, or by Harbour Air. Harbour Air is a small airline consisting of 40 aircraft, all of them being floatplanes. They offer short flights between many islands around Vancouver. Their most used aircraft models are the de Havilland Single Otter and the de Havilland Beaver. Magnix is an electric motor company based in Washington, United States. H55 is a company that makes multiple electric aircraft, including the Solar Impulse, the first solar-powered plane to fly around the world. H55 is located in Sion, Switzerland. Together, Harbour Air, Magnix, and H55 are working together on converting a de Havilland Beaver into a clean electric version called the e-Beaver. In December 2019, they had their first successful flight of the e-Beaver, and have continued testing since. Harbour Air's end goal is to convert their entire fleet of 40 aircraft to electric power. These concepts will hopefully be introduced in the next 10 to 20 years, but what can we expect in the foreseeable future? Every few years, aircraft manufacturers like Boeing and Airbus release new versions of their planes, each having major fuel efficiency improvements as high as 20% more efficient than the previous model. This has led to the modern aircraft of today being up to 80% more fuel efficient than they were in the 1950s. Progress will continue, and with every new aircraft, flights will become more fuel efficient and cheaper.